All right, we might kick it off. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with Birds of Isle. I'm Carly, and I'm part of the campaign team here at Birchal, and I'll be moderating our webinar today. Before I introduce you to the wonderful Chanel and Sally, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm speaking to you from today. Birchal is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So I'm super excited today to be joined by Chanel Milani and Sally Carter from Birds of Isle. As you all know, Birchal is working with Birds of Isle on an upcoming crowdsourced funding campaign. For those of you who haven't invested with us before or are not so familiar with crowdsourced funding, it's a form of fundraising in Australia that allows startups, small and growing businesses to raise capital from a large number of retail and wholesale investors through an online platform like Birchal. So in exchange for your money, you get equity in the business that you're investing in. Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for this offer. And as always, the information and discussion in this webinar is for informational purposes and shouldn't be considered as advice or a recommendation to invest. Please do your own research. Always consider the offer document and the general CSF risk warning before investing. You can, of course, find a lot more information available at birchal.com. So just a minute on how today's session is going to run. Chanel and Sally are going to take us through a great presentation all about the Birds of Isle business, and then we'll switch to a Q&A session. If you look to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a little Q&A bubble. If you have a question during today's session, please just feel free to pop it in the Q&A box as we go along, and we'll answer it during the Q&A time at the end. We're also recording today's session, so if you do have to jump off early, don't worry, a recording will be sent around to you after. Without further ado, very pleased to hand over to you, Chanel and Sally.
Thanks, Carly. Now, do we share our screen?
Just going to share our screen, guys. Give me 2 seconds. Perfect.
All righty. So can you see that on your end, Carly? Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Chanel.
Hi, all. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sally.
And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry. Oh, there we go. I just wanted to start by telling you a little bit about what inspired us to begin, because it wasn't one thing, it was actually 3 things. So they were Sally's lifelong love for rum. It's also the abundance of sugarcane that Australia grows, as well as my passion for creating positive change. So we'll start with Sally's lifelong love for rum, because that began back in her hometown in Gunnedah. And that is not to be confused with Canada. So Gunnedah's in northwestern New South Wales. It's about an hour from Tamworth. And rum is a really popular spirit in regional New South Wales. So it's a very nostalgic spirit for Sally. And to address the white bear in the room, yes, she did grow up with Bundy. But her romance for rum grew even stronger when she joined the Australian Army. Rum is or holds a very special place in a lot of people's hearts in the Defence Force. But romance aside, rum is also made from sugarcane, and Australia grows a ton of it. We crush up to 30 million tonnes of sugarcane every single year. And so it's for that reason that we believe rum could be Australia's answer to Scotch whisky. But for it to be Australia's answer to Scotch whisky, we knew we'd have to change the way that Australia thinks about rum. And that's where my passion came in. We saw an opportunity to disrupt the outdated perceptions from the 80s and the 90s, to ditch the pirate and the masculine tropes, and to create a drink that could be enjoyed by everyone. So the problem that we're setting out to solve is twofold. The first is that Australia grows more sugarcane than the Caribbean, but its presence in the rum industry is surprisingly small. The second is that women are also overlooked in the category. So our solution was to craft inclusive rums that reflect Australia's landscape in a unique way. And what that means is we're creating new flavours for a new audience. And the scope for new flavours is enormous. Australia grows 6,500 native Australian plants, and only a handful are currently being used in food and beverage. So there's thousands of flavours that we haven't even tried, and they grow in our own backyard, and we can take those to the world. Our vision, it's big. We want to redefine the rum industry. And our mission, it's simple, but it is irrationally ambitious. We want to change everything you know about rum. Our target customer is adventurous spirits lovers, and we want to be clear that we are not trying to convert Bundy loyalists. Birds of Isle is for people that want to explore and experience new things. So our first year, we had great traction in our first year. We had early stage revenue of $57,000. That is on par with a pre-revenue business, but it's a really positive indicator that Birds of Isle is being well received. We also had 66% year-to-date sales growth. We've been listed in some of the top restaurants and cocktail bars in the country. We just won our first key accounts, in Brisbane and Sydney. So they were Nomad, Benelong and Death and Taxes. We also had national media coverage. So we featured in some of Australia's top food and drink magazines. They included Gourmet Traveller, Delicious, and the Australian Financial Review. We also had a very exciting partnership with a celebrity chef. So Christopher Tay, he is the founder of the world famous Black Star pastry. And for those of you who don't know Black Star pastry, they created the world's most Instagrammed cake, which was the strawberry watermelon cake. But Christopher's actually gone on to start a new bakery. It's called Hearth. Their focus is on native Australian ingredients. And last Christmas, he created a bunya nut rum Christmas cake with our very own Birds of Isle. But lastly, the thing that we think indicates that we are really delivering on our mission is that 40% of our online orders came from first-time rum drinkers. So that means 1 in 2 people that came to Birds of Isle had never drunk rum before, and they came to us to try it. So we'll take a look at our competition. We believe that we are competing with new trends more than we are with traditional players. So when it comes to the traditional players, we are competing with the likes of Diplomatico, Ronza Kappa, and Dictador. But when it comes to the new trends, the spirits that are having their time in the sun right now are tequila and mezcal. But we think that presents a really, really great opportunity for us because we think that they are a great stepping stone to rum. Because just like rum, tequila and mezcal have both unaged and aged spirits in their category. They have distinctive flavour profiles, and they also have premium price points. So we think that rum is a likely next category that people will explore. So what's different about us from the traditional players? Well, the first thing, there are no overbearing flavours or aromas, unlike the infamous white bear. 2, we have new ingredients. So we're using hyper-local native Australian plants, and we have chosen ingredients that grow in the Northern Rivers to reflect the flavours of our home. 3, we have new production techniques. So we're the first in the world to bring smoke into rum with native bunya nuts. 4, we have new customers. So we are extending rum to women. We've made a drink that everyone can enjoy, and that's really something that the traditional players have neglected in the past. And 5, we have no added sugar. Now, this is a point of difference that is really for the rum nerds and the bartenders who know that Spanish-style rums typically add sugar to their rum post-distillation. And the reason they do that is because the Spanish style of rum is very dry. And so they do it to balance the spirit. But not a lot of people like that. So we've chosen to do the opposite. We've chosen to celebrate the dry spirit and not add any sugar to our rum. And what's different about us from the new trends? So if we take a look at tequila and mezcal, the ingredients are different. So rum is made from sugarcane, whereas tequila and mezcal are made from agave. We have a different process for bringing smoke into the spirit. So it's not common to find smoke in tequila, but you do find it in mezcal. And so what we do for adding smoke is we use a native Australian plant. and we soak it in the rum after it's been aged. Whereas mezcal use a native Mexican plant, and they cook it with smoke before they ferment it. And lastly, we have different flavour profiles. So our rum, it's easygoing, it's laid back. That's been very deliberate. We've tried to reflect the Australian lifestyle. Whereas when you look at tequila and mezcal, they typically have stronger, bolder flavour profiles. So let's take a look at the market. I am going to go through a few numbers here, but I'll try not to bombard you. In terms of spirit drinkers, we have 5 million spirit drinkers in Australia. And if we look at the Australian market first, the spirits industry is worth $7 billion, and that's in annual retail sales value. When we look at rum, as a percentage of that, rum makes up 10% of the market with $700 million. And when we look at volume, you'll see an acronym there that says 9LC. That is the industry metric for measuring volume in drinks. And it comes from the good old days when cases used to be made up of 12 bottles that were 750 mils. And so that's where your 9 litres came from. Today, however, cases are typically 6 bottles and 700 mil bottles, but we still use the 9LC metric so we can compare like-for-like data historically. So when we look at the volume in Australia, we're moving 9.6 million 9-litre cases of spirits, and rum makes up 1% of that at 1 million. Now, when we move to the global spirits market, this is where things get really interesting. So the value of the spirits industry is 740 billion, and rum makes up 5% of that at 300 billion. And then when we move down to volume, it's 2.6 billion 9-litre cases across the industry, and then rum taking up again 5% at 160 million 9-litre cases. So the things to note there are that the big opportunity for us is in export. When we look at the volume of rum sold overseas is 160 times the volume of the rum sold in Australia. And that's largely due to population. So we know we have a very small population in Australia. But when we look at the value is 430 times the value of rum sold in Australia. So that value is 3 times the volume. And what that means is that more premium rum is consumed overseas than it's consumed in Australia. And that makes perfect sense. When we look at the rum market here, that's largely dominated by Bundaberg and followed closely by Bacardi, and they're both low price point spirits. What we also know is that rum is growing overseas. It's growing across APAC, it's growing in Europe and the UK. But most notably, premium rum is growing in Europe. And so that's why we believe the big opportunity is in the export market. And I'm just going to give you a real world example just to try and put a bit of context to all of those numbers. But last year, Scotland actually generated the equivalent of 10 billion Australian dollars from Scotch whisky exports. So if we could make Australia as well known for rum as Scotland is for whisky, we could grow our spirits market tenfold. So the big question, does Australia really grow that much sugarcane? You betcha. Australia crushes 30 million tonnes of sugarcane every single year. And the sugar industry here is worth $2 billion, and it employs 40,000 people. And sugar is our second largest export crop after wheat. So when we talk about rum being Australia's answer to Scotch whisky, this is why. So how will we use your investment to grow Birds of Isle? We're going to use it for 2 things. The first is to expand into capital cities. So we want to grow our rate of sale in the best bars, restaurants and bottle shops across Queensland and New South Wales. And we're going to start with Brisbane because Brisbane is our closest city and it's serviceable by road from here. And so this will involve us being on the ground in Brisbane to win new accounts, and it'll also involve us supporting venues with discounts, staff incentives and trade marketing. The second thing we want to do is to grow direct-to-consumer sales, or more commonly known as D2C sales. And what we're trying to do here is redefine cocktail culture beyond the bar and bring it into our homes. We want to empower people to make bar quality cocktails at home. And it's the same thing that's happened in the food world, where celebrity chefs and cooking shows have taught us how to make restaurant quality meals at home. We want to do the same thing, but in the drinks world. And so that will involve hiring a marketing team member. It'll also involve online marketing, events. We'll be working with bartenders to create those recipes. And we'll also be filming bartenders. So we'll be filming them, teaching us how to make cocktails, teaching us about ingredients and garnishes. They'll also teach us about different bar equipment and glassware. Thank you. So if we take a look at our current sales, our sales split, you'll actually see that 20% are coming in from the D2C sales channel. You'll see 25% are coming in from the on-premise. Now, on-premise is just industry lingo for bars and restaurants. And then we've got 55% coming in from the off-premise. And so that's industry lingo for bottle shops. Now, our goal with that D2C strategy is to increase the percentage of sales that are coming in from the D2C channel. And the reason that we want to do that, well, there's three reasons, sorry, that we're trying to do that. The first is to improve our margins. The second is to navigate barriers in the wholesale market that startup drinks brands face. And the third is to maximise an opportunity that's largely been unaddressed, which is the drinks version of the foodie movement. And so lastly, why are we the ones who are likely to succeed? We have lined up strong partnerships with both high-profile venues and celebrity chefs. We've also started building a really great relationship with the media. They are not only publishing stories that we pitch to them, they are also starting to come to us for commentary on other stories. We are also female founders in a male-dominated industry. We have complementary skill sets that are core to building a drinks brand, but they're also rare to find in a founding team. So I spent 15 years working in marketing for some of Australia's most well-known brands. Sally spent 10 years working in both procurement and operations. She did that with the New South Wales state government, as well as private sector food manufacturers. And before that, she spent 11 years in the Australian Army working in supply chain. And to prove that we are women who can pioneer change, when Sally graduated from the Australian Royal Military College, she was the first woman to win both the Sword of Honour and the Queen's Medal 94 years after it opened. So we believe our opportunity to disrupt the industry is by being more than just an exceptional rum. It's by being a brand with purpose that can change consumer behaviour and create the positive change that we want to see in the world. Thank you.
All right.
Amazing. Thanks, Chanel and Sally. That was awesome. Everyone, we're going to throw to Q&A now. We haven't got any questions yet because I know you were also enthralled listening to that presentation, but please don't be shy. Feel free to pop them in the Q&A box below and Chanel and Sally will do their best to answer. In the interim, I have a few questions for you both. You've had some really great early momentum and traction that you just talked to us about. What's your most proud moment from your first year in the market?
Ooh, do you want me to answer? Or
We'll both do it. You go first and then I'll go second if you like.
I think for me, probably it was being the welcome cocktail at the Delicious Harvey Norman Produce Awards. So Delicious is a really well-known food and drink magazine. They have once a year an industry night where they award all of the best food producers in the country. That could be from, you know, the best oysters through to the best fishermen. And it is the who's who of the food night. So, you know, they had like Peter Gilmore from Bennelong, they had Guillaume there. I was incredibly starstruck, but being the welcome cocktail and having our rum served to that caliber of people was just an unbelievable moment.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, and I think my proudest moment was I do most of the back-end supply chain and logistics for the business that includes all of our order processing. And I think the first time that I received a repeat order from a direct to consumer was probably my proudest. And then I still get excited now when I see someone, if they've ordered a second, third or fourth time. I think it's just makes us proud that we've got something that people enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. All right, the questions have started rolling in, team. So Amy says it was a great presentation, and she was wondering what percentage growth do you foresee for overseas export over the next 1 to 5 years?
That is a great question. Export is still a long way off for us. So we really need to focus on the domestic market probably over the next 2 years, with a view to start exporting from 3 years onwards. And it's still very early days for us. So we need to do a lot of exploration into that market. We'd be working with the likes of Austrade to understand how we actually go about doing that before we can understand the real impact.
Amazing. Jason has a question. When do you think you'll turn a commercial profit and be self-sustaining financially?
Yeah, great question. Do you want me to answer that one?
Yeah.
So 3 years is the plan. I guess probably just to delve into production of rum a little bit. With rum, you have to make the product 2 years before you can sell it. And it's a really difficult concept to get your head around, but basically we have to pay for the production of the goods before they go into a barrel. They sit there for 2 years and then we sell it. So because of that, rum is an incredibly capital intensive industry. And so we are still working, I guess, a long way out in terms of upfront capital before we start to see that return. And so that's why that projection for profitability is in 3 years' time.
Great. Matt says, great presentation, exciting product. How much money are you after and what projected growth are you forecasting? I might just jump in on that one to help out. So just in terms of the context of how we run these offers as a licensed intermediary, ASIC takes a pretty firm view on future projections, so whether that be on product revenue or return. And a lot of these ventures, as Birds of Isle is, are early stage, so don't have a huge trading history. So it's misleading for us to give information in these offers that could be considered speculative. Because we're in the EOI phase at the moment, we'll be going over to the offer phase next week. And in the offer phase, you'll receive access to the offer document and the last 12 months of financial statements. So you'll be able to really dig into what financial position Birds of Isle is in, revenue, accomplishments, customer base to date, and what they plan to do with the funding. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Chanel or Sally?
No, not from me.
No, I think that's fine. We will actually go in the offer document we'll show the previous two full financial years, and then we will go the first 7 months of this year as well, just to be really clear and kind of show the path we're on.
Yeah.
Awesome. Karen asks, they may have missed it, but I heard direct to consumer. However, what about stores, i.e. Dan's, etc.?
Oh, yeah, great question. Do you want me to?
You start, I'll add.
Okay. So we are doing both wholesale and direct to consumer. So in terms of wholesale, it is bars, restaurants, and bottle shops. To begin with, we are starting with the independent bottle shops. To get into Dan's and the shops that are owned by Endeavour and Coles is quite challenging. And that's for two reasons. One, the big brands have incredibly big budgets, aggressive pricing that make it very difficult for small brands to compete with. But in addition to that, Endeavour and Coles also own their own drinks brands. So when you go into the grocery store and you see, Black and Gold brand, they're the home brands owned by Coles and Woolies. When it comes to the drinks world, they very cleverly brand their drinks to look like craft beverages, but they're actually owned by Coles and Endeavour. So it just leaves, I guess, not a huge amount of shelf space for startups like ourselves. So we do have a long-term view to get into those accounts, but that's probably a bigger play for us down the track.
Yeah. I think I'll just add that's certainly the bigger retailers, but there is a good volume of independent retailers that we've started to expand into over the last 6 months. and we will continue to do that. And yeah, I think it gives us an avenue with the independents, and also enables us. I'm usually in a bottle shop somewhere in the region or in the state, or depending where I've gone, on a Friday night, where we generally serve a Birds of Isle cocktail to show people a fabulous way to drink it. I chat directly with our consumers, and we will continue to do that. The plan is like every Friday, Saturday night, in a bottle shop somewhere.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. So that's where we've been getting a lot of first-hand customer feedback. Like the thing that's so great about the bottle shops is we do get to interact directly with customers, hear direct feedback. They can't lie with the expressions on their face when they're right in front of you. Most of the time, I'd say 95% of the time they're good. But it's a really great way for us to evolve our brand and evolve our product by getting that direct customer feedback.
Great. We're getting some awesome questions in. So Craig asks, is the US a market, or was it going to be a market considering what's now happening with Trump and tariffs?
Oh, great question.
Yeah, super interesting. And the US market for alcohol is really, really interesting. The US run a really different distribution system to what you see in Australia, and it is heavily regulated. And it's regulated state by state. So different rules in every single state. We have it on our list of certainly countries to explore. As Chanel mentioned, our likely export, like first avenue into exporting, is a couple of years away yet. But we have been doing work in the back end to kind of set ourselves up, certainly with our trademarking. So we've got our trademark approved in the US, so that if we enter that market. But when we look at scale, if we went into a city in the US, it potentially has a bigger population than the whole of Australia. So it would be very, if we were to go down the US market, it most likely would be I would call it a test and learn in probably a single city.
Got it. Great. Okay. Tim asks, or he says that he likes to buy a lot of rum and always keen to invest locally where I can. I believe you're currently importing your rum. I assume there are plans to ferment and distill your own.
Yeah. I'm happy to answer that. So great question. Yes, we are. So we currently do a blended product that's a fabulous blend of 5 different Venezuelan rums. We then mature those further in Australia. So we put them in a fortified wine cask. And then the last thing, and that could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months in the fortified cask. And then we do our soaking of the bunya nuts as the last part of the process. We are already distilling. Volumes are quite small. So we've got our first batch of Australian product has just ticked over the 2-year mark. It's really small volume that we've got there, but there will be an avenue to release that in the future, and then we'll continue to grow that volume moving forward with our own fermentation distillation. I don't know if Chanel, you've got more to add on to that.
Awesome. Scott asks, what are your risks and mitigations? Any lobbying to government to reduce taxes?
Yeah, really, really good. Tax, obviously the excise tax is a significant portion of what consumers pay. So for a standard bottle of Birds of Isle, 700 mils, $30 before GST is the excise tax that consumers are paying. We're part of the Australian Distillers Association, who have a body that have been lobbying to government to try to get a freeze on the excise. So I don't believe it's likely that it would be reduced, but it's more going to be frozen for a period of time to see if we can get some parity between the different classes of alcohol in Australia, because at the moment there's different percentage or dollar figure, whether it's a beer, wine or spirit. For us, though, the good thing I would say is that on our current business model and how we've structured Birds of Isle is because our first product is not distilled by us. We're not entitled to. There's a beverage manufacturer's remission scheme, where if you distill at least 70% of your product, you're entitled to a remission where you don't have to pay that $30 per bottle for the first $350,000
every single year.
Every single year. And so we've set our business up that we don't rely on that at all. And so in the future, once our products come on board that we have distilled and we can get access to that scheme, it will see improvement of our GP, which will be great.
Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. Okay, next question. We're charging through. Still lots of great questions coming in. Kate says, big rum fan, having lived in the Caribbean for several years. And they're wondering if you've undertaken any engagement with your local Indigenous community over the use of the bunya nuts, as they're aware they're a very sacred food for people from that region.
Yeah, great question. You happy for me to answer it? Yeah. Yes, we did. So we worked with a local Indigenous chef and cultural advisor. Her name is Mindy Woods. And we worked with her for that exact reason. We wanted to learn about native ingredients firsthand from the Indigenous community, but we also wanted to make sure that we were respecting the ingredients. So as an example, there are certain ingredients that are a big no-no in alcohol, and we wanted to make sure that we were, treating the ingredients with the care and the respect they deserved. So Mindy actually helps us source the bunya nuts. So bunya nuts aren't commercially grown. They grow in the wild, and they take 20 years to fruit. So they are a very, very special ingredient. And so we, through Mindy, work with different foraging businesses in the region to source our bunya nuts.
Amazing. Okay, charging on. Whilst you're aiming to grow D2C and start wholesale orders, do you have a plan mapped out already, or are you in the process of creating that plan?
Sorry, can I just clarify that question? Is that what's our plan for?
Yeah, growing D2C and starting wholesale orders. So you kind of, is that a longer term vision? Do you have a plan of how that would go moving forward?
Yeah.
I'll start with Part, and if you want to jump in.
Yeah.
So we do currently supply wholesale. We do that direct at the moment. And we also currently have our D2C channel open through our online store, and that's been running since we launched the business. There's more. I'll let Chanel talk about how we're going to grow those on the wholesale at the moment. Where I talk about us going direct, it means we don't use a wholesaler to go into our bars, restaurants, and bottle shops, but we certainly have a plan to transition across to wholesalers. And generally wholesalers are dominant by region. So for example, if we were looking at Sydney, Brisbane, there's a predominant couple of wholesalers that you'd want to use in those regions, versus if we were looking at the other side of the country in WA, it's a different wholesaler or distributor there. Once we hit the right volumes to be supported by the wholesalers, we will transition across to their platforms. I don't know if you want to talk about the growth in D2C.
So with D2C, so we do, as Sally said, we do have an online store. People can order online at the moment, but we haven't focused any effort there. So we've, sorry, take that back. The packaging experience we have put a lot of effort into, but we haven't done any marketing to actively drive more orders through the online store. Whereas we get better margins through D2C than we do through wholesale. So what our goal is to really ramp up the marketing to start pushing people to buy through the online store. And so that will involve emails, it will involve social media, and we're trying to do that in a really creative way by working with bartenders to bring that cocktail experience into people's homes and to encourage them to buy online. I guess the flow-on effect to that is by working with the bartenders in that way, we're actually going to build really strong relationships with bartenders. So hopefully it will help us get listed in the venues they work in, and we'll be top of mind for them to proactively recommend us when they're selling to their customers.
Awesome. Nicole says, terrific presentation, so informative. In this industry, can you patent or copyright any production techniques? And can someone copy your recipes or techniques?
Yeah, good question. Do you want to answer that or do you want me to?
You have a go and then I'll jump in if I have to.
I would say you could patent it. We haven't patented our recipe, or do you think the opposite?
I was going to think the opposite. I don't know if we can. Can someone copy it? They certainly can. In my experience working in, so Chanel mentioned I have worked in food manufacturing for the last decade before jumping across to our business. I don't. It would be quite difficult, I think, to get a patent on what we've done. But yeah, I was going to say you jump in and answer the rest.
No, I don't have anything
Oh,
else.
yeah. We don't have a patent on it. But for us, it's more around it's what birds of Isle. So the recipe is one thing, but beyond the product, really it's like Chanel was mentioning in the presentation, it's around what we bring from our community and what our vision is, that enables us to differentiate.
Yep. Understood. Awesome. Okay. Not a question, but a comment from Matt. We love positive feedback. So your online store is so easy to use and delivery was very quick. So well done. Thanks, Matt.
How is the logistics whiz?
Peter says, great presentation, ladies, and congrats on producing such a great drop. What will be your trigger or triggers to start reaching out into the international market?
Well, look, it's part of our growth plans. Like we know, I guess when you look at the Australian market, really the big share of rum is dominated by Bundaberg and Bacardi. So it is a difficult market to crack here, but we are taking that challenge head on. We've also got an opportunity, as I mentioned, to really recruit from other categories. So we're really looking at mezcal and tequila for a stepping stone into rum. But beyond that, we have a limitation on the volume we can sell here because we have a small population. So for us, it's probably around the 3-year mark that we will be looking to start exporting. The trigger is more so just around our capacity. So our production capacity, what we can make to support the sales volume overseas. And so that's why it'll be a couple of years down the track.
Understood. Jason says, I had the absolute pleasure of working with Sally at a New South Wales food company and have followed her and Chanel's journey. We're looking forward to coming on board as an investor. Will the crowdfunding target be reached?
Well,
I was going to say big question, Jason. Look, we hope so, but in saying that, I think we would love the support from those that have seen what we've done and are really interested and want to back us. That if you have other parties that you think may be interested, please share the Birchal links with them. Get in contact with us if you'd like us to touch base with them. Chanel and I are happy to pick up the phone and call anyone that's interested and wants to understand the opportunity. So look, we're tracking really well. So we have been, I think the expressions of interest that we've received are greater than what we initially expected. So we're happy and think that we're heading towards the right direction.
Yeah. I think we're getting close to the 400 mark now for expressions of interest. So we've been absolutely blown away by it.
Awesome. Tim's got a concern. I'd love your take on it. So one of Tim's concerns is that your brand isn't quite out there yet. He's on Facebook groups and attend plenty of related events, but I've only heard of Birds of Isle in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Great concern. So we have only been in market for 15 months. So we are brand new. We are a super early stage business. We have, in terms of social media, we are on Instagram, and we have chosen just to do one channel and do that channel well for now. But part of this raise will be to hire a marketing team member that can really help us grow our presence across all social channels, as well as through online media. So hopefully you will start hearing more about Birds of Isle in the coming years. But yeah, I guess from a marketing perspective, it is just the reality of being a new brand. It takes time to build brand awareness and equity, and for us in particular in the drinks industry, to penetrate a market that is dominated by global giants who have billions of dollars to spend on marketing every year. It is difficult.
Yeah, I think I was going to add to it though. We have been our initial focus. So in the first 12 months, we were doing events locally within our Northern Rivers region.
Yes.
And so we're looking to expand beyond the Northern region, beyond the Northern Rivers.
Yeah.
And certainly looking for events that we can do in Brisbane and then following that from Sydney, because most of our things like I think we did our first event was as part of Northern Rivers Food. That's a very, very localized event here. We've done another thing in Bangalore, a sample food festival. So we've done some festivals locally, but if you're outside of the Northern Rivers region, you haven't seen us. But part of that, when we talk about direct to consumer, beyond selling on our online store, part of the funding is to go towards us actually getting to other events.
Well, yeah, and that's a really good point. So I'd say most people in the Northern Rivers now know who we are. But yeah, with our focus on starting to now expand into Brisbane and Sydney, you made a really good point they'll be the first cities in terms of first cab off the rank, where we'll start trying to grow our brand awareness.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, Scott has a question around what are your crowdsourced funding margins, both above and below the goal? What happens if you don't make the goal, or what if you exceed the goal? So I might just jump in here as well and just say that Chanel and Sally are using this expression of interest period, as they mentioned, to really gauge market interest from customers and from their community and our community around where to set those minimum and maximum targets. And that minimum target and the max, as well as things like the valuation, will be released in that CSF offer document that goes out when the offer goes live next week. I guess, but kind of rephrasing Scott's question a little bit, if your offer far exceeds your expectations, what will you where will you direct those funds in the case that the offer really maxes out?
Well, it was those basically the two things that we spoke about. So the expansion into the capital cities, that really allows us to do that on steroids. So, rather than doing, we're starting slowly at the moment into Brisbane. If we max out, we will be able to really hit Brisbane and Sydney in a big way. So that would be a dream. And same as for the online marketing, like marketing is a scale, and we can obviously tier that relative to budget. And if we max out, we're going to go gun ho on marketing.
Yeah, I think it's like Chanel said, we I think on the Sydney and Brisbane is that it'll be minimum amount. It's a staggered approach, where we would need to tackle Brisbane first and then Sydney in the second part of the year. Whereas if we bring in more funds, it'll enable us to be able to do concurrent expansion into Brisbane and Sydney.
Got it. I'm going to try and get through as many of these questions as I can in this last 15 minutes. But if there's anything we don't get to, Chanel and Sally will absolutely get back to you directly with answers to the questions as well. So how many regular customers do you have?
In terms, do you want to talk about numbers of bottle shops and
Yes, I can off the top of my head. I don't know if I can off the top of my head.
Oh.
Have you got it?
Sorry.
To be accurate, because I'm a very accurate person, I would love to come back with the exact numbers of them.
I can, so sorry. We do have figures for the number of bottle shop customers as well as the number of bars and restaurants customers. But I will talk to online. So in terms of online, we have 10% of customers as repeat customers. So without having had any focus on marketing, that's actually a really tremendous result. So once we start funneling more marketing and activity in there, we expect to see that 10% figure increase significantly.
And exact numbers, I'd have to come back, but I think it's in the vicinity of like 30-ish bars and restaurants, and roughly the same in bottle shops might be a little bit lower. I think roughly 20 bottle shops. And predominant number of that is kind of in our local region.
Yeah.
But I can come back with the exact numbers for everyone.
Perfect. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Question, is there a risk that you may be holding yourselves back by not focusing on export opportunities over the next couple of years? Lots of interesting export questions.
Yeah. I think, look, for me, the risk would actually be the opposite if we went too early. And Chanel spoke a little bit about it earlier. It's around us being able to have the right volume sitting in the back end. And so that includes our current product being the bunyip rum, as well as our future products down the line that include our own distilled product. So that the growth cycle, I've got a 10-year forecasted production plan at this stage that gets firmed up as we kind of like, we've got 12 months under our belt now that gives us a little bit of projection on volumes. But that growth plan in production really kind of dictates when we can go to the export market. So the risk for me would be if we went too early and we couldn't continue to support domestic growth as well as being able to support the export growth. So we really need another couple of years of production to ensure that we've got the right volume of product, that we wouldn't want to lose any opportunity or risk our local supply as well as by going into an international market. So it's really a balancing act between the two at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to the previous question because I brought the numbers up on my screen just so we could answer it. So for bars and restaurants, we've got 26 customers, and for bottle shops, it's 17. So we're sitting at, close to 50 venues.
Got it. Thank you. I'm going to skip some of the questions on kind of international trade and export just because we have touched on that quite heavily. Give us a chance to answer some of the others and then we can go back. Wilson asks, any plan on working with hotel or restaurant chains to promote and put your product on their wine list?
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely part of the plan, particularly five-star hotels. They are the perfect market for a premium rum. So we have actually just started contacting some hotels that we've had some warm leads for. So hopefully you will start seeing us on those menus in the near future.
Yeah, and I think we've started with like the restaurant groups we've started to look at the moment. So there is a few different listings that we've got currently that we're looking to see if we can expand into their other venues as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. You briefly covered it earlier, but interested to hear about a bit more about your valuation, how you came to it, how much you're seeking to raise, and a breakdown of how you intend to use the capital. I might just jump in on this one as well. So just as mentioned earlier, that information will all be in the offer document, and that offer doc will go live when the offer opens next week. However, please do feel free to reach out in the interim before that offer opens to Chanel and Sally. I know that they would absolutely love to kind of talk through a bit more detail with individual investors on valuation and like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Marjorie asks, what are some sustainability initiatives in terms of production? Will you be tracking emissions or doing life cycle assessments? Some people may think it's too early, but getting going on these at the start may be the best time.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I love it. I'll jump in. So we're not currently tracking emissions, and I actually love that challenge being put to us that it isn't too early. What we are currently doing on a production side, so our label is a bagasse label, and for people that don't know what bagasse is it's a byproduct of sugarcane crushing, and so it's a waste pulp that you can convert into paper and paper-based products. So that's a recycled element that's in our label, and then we also have a fully recyclable direct-to-consumer package that goes out, so everything can go in curbside recycling. I'm a big fan that we need to make things easy for consumers, and if we can get it just to go into your curbside mixed recycling bin. And then the other thing we do is we recycle any cardboard or packaging that comes in and we reuse that. So when I say recycle, I actually reuse. An example is in our wholesale boxes, when we buy our cartons, we buy our cartons, but we don't buy the cardboard dividers that go between the bottles. We actually repurpose the dividers that come in on our palletized bottles that we use, and so I repurpose all of that and find another use for it. Can
I talk about our pipe dream?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I do preface, this is an absolute pipe dream, and this is still probably 10 years away. But sugarcane is actually a really sustainable crop. So there's sugarcane waste is used to power the sugar mills. So they generate both diesel and electricity from sugarcane waste pulp. And in terms of, I guess, the amount of power they generate, sugar mills actually generate 35% of Queensland's renewable energy. So it is a big contributor, and we hope that down the track we will be able to power the distillery with sugarcane's waste pulp. So we're not only making alcohol from it, we're also powering our distillery with it. So yeah, I'll say stay tuned for 10 years' time.
Stay tuned. But I do, thank you, Marjorie. I do like the challenge of us actually starting tracking our production now. So, and I think that, you know, with that pipe dream as we grow, moving into a B Corp certification as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, amazing. All right, last question, I think, because we're just about out of time. Thanks, everyone, for this amazing engagement. Andrew asks, what are you holding in inventory? If so, if sales went nuts, excuse the pun, could you meet the need?
That is right up my alley. I love a good pun. Yeah, in terms of inventory, so we've got obviously one product on the market at the moment. Volume that we hold, current projected forecasts, we roughly hold at any one time 12 months worth of stock of that on hand. If it was to go nuts, we generally have more product aging in the background for that, just to kind of sit on that forecasting scale. And I always work generally 12 months in advance. Volumes of, I don't know if you want to talk about volumes of full products.
Yeah,
or what else we've got sitting. So we've roughly got around 3,000 litres at varying percentages of ABV at the moment, and I won't go into that. Or if you're really interested, I can nerd out with you all day on how I technically age the stuff.
I think the key thing is that just doesn't translate directly to bottles, because barrel strength is a lot higher than bottling strength. So by the time you dilute it, those litres translate to a lot more bottles.
Yeah. So at the moment, in terms of the current batch, which is our second batch of Bunya Nut rum, I've got about 2,500 bottles available right now, which under our forecast will last us for a little while.
Okay, awesome. We might wrap it up there. Thanks so much, Chanel and Sally, for today's presentation and for answering all of these awesome Q&A questions that we got. You're obviously very passionate and engaged with building Birds of Isle, and that's really evident as well in the community that you're building around the brand. So really pumped to be hosting this offer. As I mentioned earlier, we'll send around a video for anyone who missed out. There's someone that asked a question in the chat, can they share? Absolutely, please do, share away. The expression... Yeah, share with everyone. The Expression of Interest campaign for Birds of Isle is live now and for another few days. So if you haven't already, jump onto the Birchal platform and check out the company profile. The early access for the offer campaign will open next week. So make sure to get your EOI in to have access to the offer document and all the key terms before it opens to the general public. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
See ya.
Cheers. Bye.